Madam, you have 2 days to pack your load and carry yourself out of my compound. 2 days.
I have done nothing wrong. Aye. Not to mention the fact that what you're doing right now is unlawful.
Do not open your mouth to talk to me about unlawful. Don't talk to me about rent, not about refund or any of those grammar you people like to speak. In this compound, I am the law, not the police, not the government. Me, E. You are looking at me, a girl your age, coming back home in the middle of the night. No shame at all. I said 48 hours. If my eyes see you in this compound after that, you will meet the real Aye, and you will not like her.
Esther said nothing else. She looked at the old woman the way you look at a small child screaming over sweets, calmly, patiently, waiting for her to finish, because Iye did not know that the young woman she had locked outside the gate at midnight, the one she was now threatening with eviction, that woman was a lawyer, a real trained practicing lawyer, and she had already been inside her apartment writing, word by word, exactly how this whole thing was going to end. Sit back. Let me take you to the beginning. Esther was in her 20s, beautiful in that quiet way that does not beg for attention, and tired of her old apartment, tired of noisy neighbors, tired of chaos. She wanted somewhere calm, somewhere she could lock her door in the evening and breathe. So she called an agent and he showed her houses, most of them a scam on the eye. Beautiful photos online, then you arrive and the toilet is weeping and the road to the gate wants to finish your car before rent finishes your account. Then he showed her one. Small, neat compound, quiet as a church on Monday morning. Smooth road to the gate, the whole place fenced high and solid with CCTV cameras posted at every corner like watchmen that never blinked. The apartment itself was airy, cross-ventilated, the kind where breeze moves through without being begged. And then the agent said the words that in this Nigeria are almost too sweet to believe. And ma, the light here is very steady, almost 24 hours. Esther nearly laughed out loud. Steady light in Nigeria. If you have ever paid a light bill in this country and still slept in darkness, then you understand exactly what those words meant to her. Secure, ventilated, calm, smooth road, CCTV, and steady electricity. It was everything she wanted. There was only one thing. The landlady, the agent said a little carefully, lives in the front flat. And that sentence, that small, ordinary sentence, is where our whole story hides. If you are Nigerian, something moved in your chest when you heard that. We know, we have heard the stories. Some of us have lived them. The landlord or landlady inside the same compound, watching when you leave, counting your visitors, monitoring your generator, your light, your movement, everything. The compound becomes their kingdom. You, the tenant who is paying full market rent, slowly become a servant inside the very house you paid for. So when Esther told her friends, the warnings came fast and loud. A landlady in the front flat? Esther, please, have you not heard how these things end? These old women that sit at home all day, they will turn your life into their full-time job. Take another house, even if the light is not as steady, peace of mind is worth more. But Esther only smiled. Me, I keep to myself. I go to work, I come back, I enter my house. I do not throw parties, I do not look for trouble, and trouble does not know my address. What will I be quarreling with an old woman about? On paper, she had a point. Esther was genuinely a quiet person. She worked at a law firm in the city, serious with her career. And outside of work, she stayed indoors, ordered food, watched movies, rested. If any tenant on this earth could live peacefully under a strict landlady, surely it was somebody like her. That was what she believed. She went to meet the landlady. Everybody in the compound called her Iye. She was an elderly woman, well-kept, sharp-eyed, the kind that sits in one place and yet somehow sees everything happening in 3 compounds at once. She occupied that chair in front of her flat all day, watching the gate, watching the cars, watching every soul that entered and left. When Esther came to introduce herself, Ye looked at her up and down slowly, not admiring, assessing. So you are the one that wants the apartment. Are you married? Do you have plenty of people coming and going? No, ma, I am single. I work Monday to Friday. I leave in the morning, come back in the evening. Very quiet person. You will hardly even notice I'm here." And when Iye heard that, something pleased flickered behind her old eyes. Single, quiet, stays indoors. No husband to challenge her, no wild crowd. In Ye's mind, she had just found the perfect tenant, a gentle, soft, agreeable little girl who would nod at everything, obey every instruction, and never give any trouble. A tenant she could shape like soft clay. Oh, Ye, if only you had known. Then Iye brought out the tenancy agreement. Esther read it, not glanced at it, read it, line by line, clause by clause, the way she read everything. And most of it was fair, standard, nothing strange. Only one clause held her eye a moment. No music, no loud noise, and no generator after 11 at night or before 5:30 in the morning, for the peace of others in the compound. Esther thought about it, and she found it completely reasonable. She had no plan to blast music at 2 in the morning anyway. So she signed. She paid 1 full year of rent up front, collected her keys, and moved into her bright, airy apartment, believing with her whole heart that she had found peace. She had signed the agreement. She had kept her side of it. In her mind, everything was settled. She had no idea that in Ye's mind, the real agreement had nothing to do with that paper. At first, everything was smooth. Every weekday morning, Esther stepped out smartly dressed, greeted Ye on the chair outside, and left. In the evening, she returned, greeted again, and entered her apartment. She followed every rule, kept to herself completely. The only other time she came out were to collect a delivery at the gate, her food order, a package, ordinary things. For a few weeks, it looked like Esther had won her bet. Like she really was the exception, the one quiet tenant who could live in peace beside a landlady in the same compound. But a certain kind of person, when they sit and watch a calm, comfortable young woman living freely and needing absolutely nothing from them, something in their spirit cannot rest. It irritates them, provokes something old and bitter inside. And slowly, quietly, Iye began to look for trouble where there was none. The trouble did not start with anything big. Esther wanted to mount her television and install an air conditioner. Simple, normal. Any human being living inside Nigerian heat understands this without one word of explanation. So she arranged for a technician to come on a Saturday morning. Now, the moment that delivery van rolled into the compound, something shifted in Ye's spirit. Because Ye had one rule carved permanently in her heart that appeared nowhere in that agreement. Nobody drills a hole in her wall. Nobody. So on that Saturday morning, Ye suddenly became an extremely busy woman. First, she came out to sweep, but she had already swept that same floor clean at 6 that very morning. Yet here she was at 9, sweeping the same spot near Esther's door, bending, sweeping, finding nothing, one ear tilted toward the apartment like a satellite dish searching for signal. The technician began unpacking his tools. Ye swept closer. He measured the wall. Ye suddenly discovered that a flower pot nearby was standing at completely the wrong angle, and she began adjusting it, slowly, very slowly, while watching from the corner of her eye. Then, the technician brought out the drilling machine, and on my honor, the very second he lifted that thing and it made its first small test sound, that soft mechanical cough of a drill being tested, Ye materialized at Esther's window like a spirit summoned by name. What is that noise? What are you people doing in there? I hope you are not drilling my wall. Who gave anybody permission to drill my wall? Esther walked calmly to the window. Good morning again, Ma. It is just the AC and TV. Very small holes. He knows his work well. Small holes? Ye's eyes widened as though she had heard a curse. Small holes are still holes. When you leave this place one day, will you carry them on your head and go? The holes will remain in my wall forever. Esther kept her voice gentle. Ma, with respect, this was never in our agreement. An air conditioner cannot hang in the air by itself. Ye refused to leave. She simply took up her position at that window, arms folded, face tight, standing watch, and each time the drill touched the wall, Ye would flinch and hiss, pressing her hand to her chest as though the drill was going into her own body. By the third drill, she was standing there like a woman watching a horror film unfold with her own eyes. But the AC went up, the TV went up. Esther had it done neatly because she was right and she knew it. It was her apartment, she had paid for it, and nothing in their agreement forbade it. That was the first time Esther quietly refused to bow, and the year did not forget.
From that day, the complaints began to fall like rain. Now Esther was closing her door too hard. Now the generator was too loud, even though she switched it off every night before 11, exactly as agreed. Petty thing after petty thing. And each time, Esther calmly said the same thing. Ma, I am within the terms of our agreement. And that calm, correct, unshakable answer was the exact thing that began to truly provoke Iye. Because Iye was not looking for a tenant who obeyed the agreement. She was looking for a tenant who would obey her, agreement or not. And this quiet girl kept doing something Iye had not expected from such a soft-looking person. She kept standing on her rights, politely, firmly, like a young tree that bends in the wind and refuses to fall. Then came the evening that poured petrol on everything. Esther had worked like an animal that whole week. Long days, heavy files, meeting after meeting. By Friday, she was finished. So she invited one friend over, just one, to relax. They cooked, they talked, they played some music, nothing outrageous, just enough to feel alive again. And this was still early evening, well within the agreement. And through all of it, from her chair, Iye watched. Around 9, the two friends stepped out to a lounge nearby to eat and unwind. As they walked through the gate, Iye's eyes followed them all the way, sharp, silent, burning. They came back just after midnight, tired in the good way, laughing softly. Esther had broken no rule. The music had stopped hours earlier. She had made no noise coming in. She had simply gone out and come back to her own house, the house she had paid a full year for. The next morning, her phone rang. It was Iye. What kind of behavior is that? A young lady going out in the night and coming back after midnight in my compound. You that told me you are a quiet indoor person. And Esther understood immediately what this truly was. Not about noise, she had made none. Not about the agreement, she had broken none. This was the bitterness of a woman who simply could not stand watching a young single girl living freely, happily, answering to nobody. Esther's freedom offended Iye, not because it broke a rule, but because it was freedom itself. And freedom in another person's hand is a very hard thing for a controlling spirit to watch. So Esther said nothing. She let the old woman talk. You are not even answering me, Iye said, her voice dropping into something with a warning buried inside. This time I am talking to you nicely, but next time, Esther, next time I will not be so polite. You will see. Then she cut the call. Esther lowered her phone slowly. She was not shaking, she was not afraid, but something quiet and cold settled in her chest because she recognized a threat the moment she heard one, and she knew from that instant that this was no longer about noise or generators or holes in a wall. This was now a woman who had decided in her heart to break her. About a month later, it happened. Esther had a birthday party to attend, a close friend, an important night. That evening, she dressed up beautifully and stepped out through the gate. Iye was there in her chair and she saw her leave. She saw the fine dress. She saw the young woman walking freely into the night once again on her own terms. Something in Iye hardened into a decision. That night, while Esther was away at the party, Iye rose quietly from her chair and walked to the gate. And she changed the padlock. She removed the lock everyone used and replaced it with her own, a new one to which only she held the key. Then she went back inside, lay down, and waited. Esther came home a little after midnight, happy, tired, ready for her bed. She reached the gate, put her key in. It did not turn. She tried again. The padlock was different, foreign, and slowly, standing alone in the dark outside the high fence of the house she had paid 1 full year for, the truth crawled up the back of her neck like cold water poured from behind. She had been locked out on purpose. She called Iye. It rang,
and rang. She called again. She knocked on the gate. She stood on that quiet street, a young woman alone, past midnight, locked out of her own home, her heart knocking hard against her ribs. Iye was inside, lying down, listening to every knock and choosing deliberately to do nothing. There was no light in Iye's flat, and Esther, calm even inside her fury, finally accepted the situation. She found her way to a small hotel nearby, paid for a room she should never have needed, and sat in the quiet of it. She did not cry. She did not call anybody to rain abuses. She simply sat there, and in the stillness, something in her shifted completely. The soft, patient tenant lay down to sleep, and a very different woman was going to wake up in the morning. Morning came. Esther returned to the compound. Iye had opened the gate and was back on her chair as if nothing had happened. When she saw Esther walk in, tired, still in yesterday's clothes, not one shadow of shame crossed her face. Instead, she attacked. 2 days, pack your load and carry yourself out of my compound, and do not talk to me about refund. In this compound, I am the law. Esther looked at her steadily. Ma, you said you are the law, right? We will see. She turned, walked into her apartment and gently closed her door. Iye smiled to herself. She thought the girl had finally understood who was in charge. She thought Esther had gone inside to pack. But here's what Iye still did not know, the one thing she had never bothered to ask. That quiet, respectful, soft-spoken tenant who greeted her every morning, who read every clause of their agreement, who kept calmly citing her rights again and again, that young woman was a lawyer, a trained, practicing lawyer. And inside that apartment, she did not pack one single item. She sat down, opened her laptop and wrote 2 petitions. The first to the police, laying out clearly what had happened. A tenant fully paid up for 1 year, locked outside her home in the middle of the night and endangered on the street, then threatened with illegal eviction and the seizure of her rent. Every date, every detail, every fact arranged the way only a lawyer knows how to arrange facts, so they stand up and refuse to fall. Then, the second to the FCCP, the body that exists in this country precisely to protect people from this exact kind of treatment. She laid out the entire case, the breach of agreement, the intimidation, the refusal to refund money collected for a service not delivered. She read both petitions through once, saved them, freshened herself, dressed properly, and stepped out of the compound. Iye watched her go from the chair and assumed the stubborn girl had finally gone to find another house. Iye could not possibly have been more wrong, because a few hours later, Esther came back. This time, she did not come back alone. She came back with the authorities. When Iye saw the officials walking into her compound behind that quiet girl she was so sure she had crushed, the arrogance drained out of her face like water from a cracked pot. The woman who declared herself the law suddenly could not find her own voice. The matter was laid out officially, right there in her compound. The illegal lockout, the endangerment of a tenant in the dead of night, the threatened eviction without lawful notice, the refusal to return 10 months of collected rent, and as each point was stated, Iye began to shrink, smaller and smaller, right there in the middle of the kingdom she had ruled for so long. Iye, she started, voice trembling now, all the fire completely gone. Iye, my daughter, please, there is no need for all of this. Stay in the house. Let us just settle this quietly, as one family. As one family. Now suddenly they were family. But Esther, standing there calm and unmoved, did not soften. She had been polite for 2 solid months. She had greeted this woman every single morning with warmth. She had obeyed every rule, absorbed every provocation, and still been locked outside on the street at midnight like a stranger. No, some kindness has to be earned back. It is too late for family, ma, Esther said quietly. You had all the time in the world to treat me like a fellow human being. You chose this path yourself. The compound was completely silent. Esther, she continued, these petitions are already written. For me to withdraw both of them and let this end right here, you will pay me 500,000 naira. For the night you locked me out on that street, for every month of harassment inside this house, for the stress. Iye's mouth fell open. 500,000 naira? I do not have that kind of money. Then find it, Esther said, still gentle, and somehow the gentleness made it more frightening than shouting ever could have been. Because if this goes to court instead, I will not be asking for 500,000 there. I will be asking for millions, and with everything you have done, every law you have broken, I will get it. So you decide, 500,000 quietly right now, or we let the court decide what your behavior is truly worth. And just like that, the game was finished. Iye, who had bragged with her chest out that she was the law of this compound, who had crept out in the dark to change a padlock just to punish a young woman for daring to live freely, sat down and understood for the first time in her life that she had picked a fight with the wrong tenant. She paid 500,000 naira, every note of it, straight into Esther's account, and Esther, true to her word, withdrew both petitions and let the matter rest. But here's the part of the story that I love most. Esther did not pack out. No, she stayed. She stayed right there in that apartment, fully within her rights, and she lived there for the next 6 months in complete, undisturbed peace. And every single day of those 6 months, Iye had to see her, had to watch her come and go, freely, comfortably, untouchable, had to sit on that same chair in front and quietly acknowledge the girl she had once tried to throw into the street. No more complaints about holes in the wall, no more generator drama, no more calls about coming home at night, because Iye had finally learned the hard and expensive way, what should have been obvious from the very beginning. That tenancy agreement was not a favor she was doing Esther. It was a law that protected them both equally. And the day she treated it like tissue paper, it turned around and showed her its full and heavy weight. Then, a few months before her rent even expired, Esther packed her things and left, on her own terms, quietly, the way she did everything. Not because Iye pushed her. Iye could never push Esther out again, and both women knew it. Esther left because she chose to leave. She had made her point, she had collected what was fair, she had proven everything that needed proving. But at the end of the day, she was simply tired of living somewhere she was not truly welcome. She wanted a home where she was respected, not merely tolerated. And she had learned that a beautiful house with steady light and a high fence and CCTV cameras at every corner means nothing at all if peace does not live inside it. She did not go online to drag Iye's name down. She did not carry the story to every ear in the neighborhood. She simply took what was hers, closed that chapter completely, and moved forward to a better place, the exact same way she closed every chapter in her life, quietly, cleanly, with her head held high. And that's the lesson I want you to carry home from this story. Never look at a quiet person and assume they are weak. The one who does not shout is not always the one who cannot fight. Very often, the calmest person in the room is the one holding the most power, simply waiting patiently for you to reveal exactly who you are. And never sit high on top of a gentle person simply because they are being patient with you. The person who shouts the loudest that they are the law is almost always the one who has never properly read it, and the day the real law walks in, all of their shouting becomes begging. Iye thought her compound was her kingdom. She learned in the most expensive way possible that no fence is high enough to lock out justice once it decides to arrive, and no gate is strong enough to keep it out. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the very end of this one. It truly means the world to me that you sat through this entire story. If Esther's calm strength moved you, tap that subscribe button before you go and join our growing family so we can keep telling stories where the humble are not trampled and the quiet ones are never underestimated. And tell me in the comments, was Esther right to make Iye pay every single kobo, or should she have simply forgiven the old woman and walked away? Some of you will say she should have taken it all the way to court. Others will say she showed great wisdom in settling quickly. Let me hear your side. And if you have ever had to stand up to somebody who mistook your kindness for weakness, type "I can relate" and share your own story. Let us see how many of us there are. Now, do not go anywhere just yet. There will be another story waiting for you on your screen in a couple of seconds. Another story about justice that arrives at exactly the right moment. Go ahead and tap on it. I promise you it is worth every single minute. Click on it and I will see you on the other side.